So today we're going to be looking at my new track Addicted, especially looking at the leads, and then I'll show you some of the pads. I did try to record this video before and I didn't actually hit record, so fancy that. Right, so first of all, first layer is Atlantis Pluck from the reorder soundbank for Spire. I've done a little EQ on it, taking the low end out at 136 Hz and then boosting it around the mids just to make sure it doesn't seem too hollow, and that sounds like this. I will say from the off that if my CPU plays up on this, there's nothing that can be done. I've tried over and over and over to help this machine, but I'll have to upgrade. It seems to have good days and have bad days, but hopefully it will behave today. The next layer is Lead Big Brother. It's from the same pack, and that has again a lot of the low taken out and a bit of a boost around the mids and the highs, just to give it a bit of character. And that sounds a bit like this. Next we move on to lead 3, which is the Unlove lead, all from the same pack. This has a low cut again, 237 Hz with a boost in the highs just to bring out some clarity, which sounds like this. And then finally we have the Porter lead from the pack, which is just the raw preset. The processing occurs later in this bus here, which I'll show you in a sec. But the actual sound sounds like this. So when they all come together, I route them through to this lead bus, which has a compressor of a threshold of -21 dB and a ratio of 4, with a relatively middle of the range attack there. On the fab filter you have a lot of flexibility with how much attack, and the Reason devices, it's not necessarily that good. The Reason compressors weren't necessarily my favourite, especially since I've started using fab filter. Release at 20, and then I've boosted a bit in the wet gain before going to just do a little bit more EQ in the highs and the mids on the full channel. Now with that on, the full grandeur is a bit like this. And what I like to do is take the bounce the audio file. So I'll put the leads into, you know, the melody, and then do all my filtering and how I think that it's going to go throughout the track. And then I will bounce it to audio file, and then after I've bounced it to an audio file, I'll then put it into Ableton, where in Ableton I'll then use the Ableton reverb to add a little bit more room or depth to the sound, because you can, I guess you can do it with other plugins such as Art Acoustic, but I like the Ableton reverb for that particular job. So now that we have the audio file, the next step is to show you what I do in the main project. Now, to try and save some CPU, I've deleted everything and moved it on to a bus bounce here. You have the sort of sound effects and a few atmospheres. But yeah, let me just show you the lead here. and it sounds much wider and fuller due to the fact that I have put a glue compressor, a cyatomic glue compressor, on the file, and then after that a little bit more EQ for dusting the top area, and I automate the low end to make sure that it doesn't interfere when the drums are there. So when it's in the breakdown, it's in its full glory, but I do cut back ever so slightly just to make sure that nothing is getting in the way of anything else. So after that, just a LFO tool for some sidechain, and yeah, once the level is right, it's pretty much sorted. So next there's the pad, which I use as a sort of a glossy layer for the breakdown in this track. It's not one of those big super saw pads. It's more of like it's a combination of two glossy sounding pads from Spire, which then they both go through this mixer here, and from the mixer they get some treatment with an EQ to really bring out the stereo sound in that in the pad, and then a bit more glue for the two of them to come together, and then finally a little bit more harsh LFO tool for sidechain. And along with that is the sub pad. Now the sub pad is it's a preset from the Spire Trance Essentials called Deep Taurus, and then I do some crazy EQ here to give it a rumbly Reese bass sound. For any drum and bass lovers out there, the Reese bass sort of Reese bass line had I guess you could call it a moving sound. It's hard to explain. It's not like an LFO, but it's kind of like it's the way that it interweaves really sits nicely underneath this underneath the rest of the composition. So let me show you if I can. Let's just have a look. No doubt the CPU will probably not make it easy. So the final thing to show you is this little pluck, which brings the close of this section into the build-up. It goes a bit like this. And I love this sound. It's one that's been used in my track Decadence and in my track Local Anesthetic, and I do layer it with a piano sometimes when I'm doing my vocal remixes, when there's a lovely side melody. If I put it in a piano and then layer this underneath, it has such a large stereo sound to it. And basically it's a sample, as a kind of like a multi-sampled lead, which then goes through EQ and delay and massive reverbs and some sidechain and tape saturation to create it, and it's so effective. But you have to tame it in a way. You have to make sure it's not too loud, or it's not too, it's not coming through the mix too much. Yeah, that's I'll actually, before I finish, I'll show you that the pad runs through two sends. One of them is the Arts Acoustic Reverb, which acts as a sort of underlying reverb. The fact that it's got a sidechain on with the LFO tool here means that it doesn't interfere too much with the rest of the composition. And I've also got a ping pong delay using Reason's The Echo, and it's a emulation of the old analog ping pong delay sort of hardware instruments, hardware effects. So you get that. I guess you could call it like tail, a reverb tail. Yeah. So I will show you some MIDI actually, since I know that a few people like to go overboard with pads. I try to keep it maybe four notes playing at the same time maximum, but it really isn't about overpowering the listener. It isn't about, you know, throwing so much stuff that it sticks. It's really all about the right positioning of sound and the right type of sound to really achieve that result. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and if you do like the track, please buy it and support it. And if you have any recommendations for future tutorials, future walkthroughs, what you'd like to know, and if I'm able to do it, I will, please leave them in the comments. Thank you.